Welcome back to Cash Café, where we talk about all things money, how to make it, how to spend it, but most importantly, how to keep it. This episode is brought to you by Butterfield, helping our community build smarter money habits, one conversation at a time. So, Dan, Robbie, you are the duo that make up Compound Property Group.
Yes.
You are two of Bermuda's leading real estate industry professionals, and each of you help property owners to navigate their wealth through real estate and also Bermuda's property market. So, first, I want to thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah.
And I'm just going to correct you really quickly too, Terry. So you said real estate. It's more real estate and construction, or
Yeah.
we say property.
Okay.
Consultants in this
I
way.
handle more or less the construction side of things and everything that entails, whether that's project management, whether that's estimating, construction management. Dan handles more of the real estate side, but I know people heard real estate and think of an agent. So Dan will let you know what that means as
That's
far
why
as
I
real
corrected
estate.
it.
Yeah.
But,
Appraisals, valuations, it's all tied into real estate, but we don't want people to think that we're trying to sell homes or buy homes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually important for me to note because I was actually going to start with the origin stories and kind of go into, I guess, both of you's expertise and the knowledge that you guys have in the property industry. I'm
Okay.
going to now say that now. So, Dan, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the industry.
The long version or the short version? You gotta keep him on the.
Okay, well, it's the two of you. So, we're going to do the Cliff Note version.
Okay.
I'll fight this guy. Yeah. All right. So born and raised Bermuda. High school Soltis. Went overseas to Toronto, and then came back to Bermuda. As I was in Bermuda, I was doing events and event management. And while doing that, a lot of the skills I was doing there, I kept on getting told that they would translate really well to real estate. Eventually got my real estate license as an agent. And then from there, I then put together a proposal to a company, Kitson group of companies, and they actually sponsored me to go back away to school, where I studied to be a valuer. Initially, I had no idea what valuation and appraisers were. I was just told that it is recession proof, one, and they are in dire need, especially locals. So it was something that I took up. I put together a proposal, and they supported me throughout that process. Came back to Bermuda after 3 years abroad in Kingston University in London, and been sort of in this property space ever since. I interned at one of the appraisers locally, and then moved over to government where I got gained some experience. And even before that, I was working as an agent for about 3 or 4 years. So during that time, I got my qualifications, got my designations, and I paired up with this handsome, tall gentleman to my left. And while we was going through the grind of getting our qualifications together, we sort of said, hey, there's a need, there's a void of local talent within this space, and it was an aging industry, the surveyors. And so we said, why not swing for the fence? Let's give it a try. And we actually both left our jobs on the same day. Yeah, on the same day. Earlier this year, and went full time with Compound Property Group, which had already been about 2 years into existence. But
Short version.
short version. Sorry. And here we are talking to Terry. Rob.
Love that. So, yes, Robbie, switching over to you. What first pulled you into the industry? Because you did mention off camera about, being construction. So tell me about your origin story in that space.
So interesting in that, people get into their careers and it's always like they knew right from the get what they wanted to do. So I'll start with saying I never wanted to be in construction. And people might say, well, how is that? And I think it's for the lack of knowledge that people have around the construction industry. Everybody always thinks construction is somebody's laying block or a carpenter or a trade, which obviously those are always needed. But I'm not a person that likes to do manual labor. So initially I went to school for management and accounting. So I graduated with a management degree and then got an accounting degree. And in that time frame in school, I was working at a construction company as like doing bookkeeping and just general stuff. The boss took a liking to me and he was like, you're very good with your people, your management skills. Would you want to do project management? I was like, I guess. And then fast forward a few years, I graduate, and then he offers me a job. He says, "I'm going to mentor you. Going to give you a mentor as well, and you're going to really learn this project management stuff." Because obviously, it's good to get the theory, and I did some courses, but you really learn on the job with project management. So I did that for a number of years, and that company closed down. And then, as Dan said, we met up at government. We worked on getting our designations, and yeah, after that, we just said, "Hey, let's start compound," because again, the surveying I do is a lot different than the surveying Daniel does, but it is a niche market, and there's not a lot of people in the island that do it or have the qualification. So yeah, that's my short version.
Thank you.
I felt longer than mine. We have to
We'll
we'll
definitely
check
check. We'll
check the
check the
records.
records. So I want to set the scene for Bermuda's real estate landscape, and I want to start with you, Robbie, first to talk about the construction standpoint and what are some of the things that are influencing the cost of building right now. Because I do feel like there is a little bit of lack of education on some of these things, and people kind of jump into projects thinking they have enough money, and then they realize that they didn't.
Yeah, so it's a myriad of things that can influence costs. Obviously, with Bermuda having a high cost of living, you obviously have labor. So people want to get paid a decent wage to work, no matter what the job is. And then when you look at the price of doing business just across the board, um, and then you jump into obviously materials. Construction materials can fluctuate. When you heard the word fluctuate, you think, oh, up and down, but generally speaking, nothing goes down. So right now, you're having to deal with, like everybody deals with, everything has to be imported, and Bermuda has to depend on outside sources, because we do not fabricate or manufacture any of the materials. We did at one point in terms of for concrete, for sorry, the aggregates that we make for concrete and make for block, but even now those are exhausted, so we have to get all of those from overseas. So we're at the mercy of overseas markets. We all know what happens with tariffs and Trump, and even before that. Um, so yeah, it's hard to control it, but in my line of work, I have to sort of keep a pulse on the fluctuation of prices. Most of the time, the things that are driving, the cost of construction are cement, block, lumber, steel, all the things that really go into making up a building. So price of materials is the number one driving factor.
Okay, and so Danny, Dan, sorry, I made up that nickname for you.
Man,
My
Danny
apologies.
sounded good though.
Okay, well, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
From your perspective as a valuer, what should the everyday buyer have in mind, or what should they understand about Bermuda's current property market?
So, I mean, it's supply driven, right? And Bermuda is only so big. We're not getting any more land unless it's news to me. And we can really only go up and develop where we can develop, right? Obviously, we want to protect as much of the green land as possible, but at the same time, there has to be a balance. So, when looking at the Bermuda market, I think people have to realize that it's a very, very competitive market. You need to have all your ducks in a row prior to, know what your budget is, have those conversations, and really build on from there. A lot of people have pie in the sky numbers of what it would cost to fix something up, what it would cost to purchase something. So I think doing their diligence on what the actual market activity looks like, and talking to someone like myself or any real estate agent to really get a clear picture of what they can get within their budget. Because right now it's been anything that is priced right, there's multiple bids, multiple offers, and it's very competitive. One tip that I always tell people, especially um, if they're first-time homeowners or have a young family or whatever, I say take a picture of and write a letter. A lot of people in
Make it personal.
yeah, make it personal.
Yeah.
Property is sentimental. So when people are buying their first home or people are selling their family home, they want to see that it's going to hands that feel familiar or they're helping someone out. A lot of these older Bermudians, boomers, have a lot of built up wealth. So it's not like sometimes they don't need it. Sometimes they don't want to split the estate between the three siblings or the three, So it's about just being aware of all of the different factors of how to navigate it. And ideally, if possible, try to get property before it hits the market. See a property you like, go up and ask that person. Because an off-market property deal is much better than going into a competitive bidding war.
Nice. So I do want to say that is actually a big decision. Like buying a home, whether it's a fresh home or I guess a second home or an investment property, is still a big decision.
Mhm.
And so when someone is deciding whether they want to buy or sell, what are some of the key things they should pay attention to during that valuation process? Because we have started to kind of bring up multiple topics in the industry of property.
Mhm.
And I do feel like a lot of people don't understand or even know what that part of it looks like. So if you can explain a little bit more, like what are some things people should pay attention to?
Yeah, so I think it's having a clear plan, right? A lot of people say they want to buy a property. My number one question is, all right, well, why are you buying the property? Who is the property for? What is the purpose of buying the property? Because then from there you can sort of reverse engineer it and get the answers that you need for how much money you're going to put into the property, how much development potential is an investment. So you have to look at it in a few different layers. Is this going to be your family home? Because sometimes if you're purchasing a family home, then and you have no intention to sell and you want your kids to eventually have it, then you can start looking, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and start doing things in phases. And you might not care as much about getting a return on investment for, you go and spend this on this. You're not looking for that to be reflected in value because this is going to be your family home. If you're doing an investment property, you're not going to want to go and spend money on crazy things because it's just going to be, you're going to be turning it over to renters. So I think that's a big key that often goes, missed. And I'd say always, especially because of the point that I made earlier with Bermuda being so small and we're not getting any more land, is look at what offers development potential. Because, if you have room where you can go up 2 stories and build, whatever to help create wealth, make it easier on your family, your loved ones, homesteads, this is, pull it all back to that, especially when looking at wealth creation.
Just to piggyback off there, and he touched on it a bit, but definitely, and I think we need to drive home of why are we buying a property. So, for example, like Dan mentioned, if it's an investment property, you want to know what the cost is that you're going to put into it prior to buying, what the value is, and the highest that it will be valued at. And values can be based on anything as far as
Location, 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 man.
that's what I was trying to get out of you. That's what I was trying to get out of you. Location, location, location. The same house that is in X and all of these same finishes and build out,
Yeah.
it's not going to be valued the same as a place in Y. So
Mhm.
understanding it was an investment property and you're looking to sell it or get a return, you only want to put so much in it as far as construction because you're only going to be able to sell it for X.
Understand your ceilings
But
for
if it's
your rental ceiling, your sales ceiling. Certain properties in certain areas aren't going to sell for $4 million.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Don't care if you have marble floors or infinity pools.
So,
But
if it's your home, then that's cool. So yeah, keep that in mind.
I think I definitely will. I don't own a property yet, and I have heard people in our generation talking about like being a first time homeowner and these things. And Dan, you mentioned around the fact that Bermuda isn't getting any more land, but there is, I think, ignorant. So maybe you guys can educate me that there is land that can be bought, and potentially someone can either build a home or renovate a home that they do purchase. So Robbie, from that perspective, what are some costs that people need to keep in mind and these factors that when it comes to either building a home from the ground up or renovating, because that is something that people miss. I think you guys have touched on it. Like we have pie in the sky numbers, we have these really big lofty ideas that we want to be able to pay only this much, and then it becomes twice or three times as much. So what are some of those cost factors that people are maybe missing?
I blame Netflix and property. What's the Property Brothers?
HGTV and all that.
HGTV. That's what I blame.
Yeah.
But
So-
go ahead, sorry.
In terms of cost for new builds versus renovation or adding on, definitely a lot of factors, but I would say again, it's you make that decision based on your personal scenario, what your funding is, what your budget is, and there is land out there to buy, but obviously the numbers have to work. So you can see a piece of land and it's in location X and it is worth whatever. You have to be able to know that, okay, when I buy this land, I can then, let's say you got to clear it, you got to get topographical surveys, you got to get boundaries marked out. So let's say a piece of land is 300 and then you go buy or put a house on it for $1 million. You're already in at 1.3. Are you able to get 1.3? You know what I mean? And then you're looking at hidden costs like you got a 30 lot, depending on the lot size. That could be 50 grand to cut down a bunch of trees. Can you even cut down those trees? Is it, zoning requirements? Is it agricultural space? Like all of these things you have to sort of have an idea on because they're costs that don't really reveal themselves until you're too late. And you don't want to begin buying a piece of land and then you're like, oh, I spent all of this money and then I can't do anything with it, or I can't do as much as I thought. Then when you're looking at um, building on or renovations, depending on if you've always owned the house or if you've bought it from someone else. Let's say if you bought it from someone else. Let's be honest, you don't know what you're gonna find when you start knocking down walls.
Like a used car.
Yeah, opening up a old tank or a cesspit. So new builds are easier because they may or may be more expensive, may or may not be, I should say, depending on your scenario. But then a renovation, you might only have that option, but there might be some hidden costs that you just don't know about. The electrical could be shoddy.
Cool.
The plumbing could be messed up. There could be a crack in your tank. You might have structural issues with your roof that you never really thought. But then once you start doing renovations, those things pop up. So having things like, structural assessment done, a structural survey, having people that have knowledge coming in, trying to check off these things to mitigate these risks. You're never always going to catch everything, but at least looking at the beginning. So those are the two differences when it comes to new build or, renovating. So yeah.
Okay, and so with that, because it sounds like it takes a lot of planning and project management to get into it, and you did share in your origin story that that's kind of a way that you got into the industry and how it kind of added on to the skills that you already had and that you were able to transfer over. So can you share what are some of the, I guess, planning steps and that can be taken for someone who wants to do either new build or reno to make it make sense for them? Because I do feel like that's something that at the end of the day, everyone wants it to make sense.
Yeah. So we always like to ask, what stage are you in? So people may come to us and say, hey, I see what you guys are doing on Instagram. Can you come do this for me? I need to add a bathroom. I want to renovate. And I'm going to say it just so everybody knows, we're not architects or designers. And for the most part,
And we're not contractors.
yeah, and we're not general contractors. So we don't actually do the building. We work with all of these types of people and we could put you in contact with all those types of people. But first thing I like to ask people is, have you reached out to an architect? Because they'll help you with your design. They'll let you know what you can and can't do, setbacks, can you go up, can you do this? And then I like to say to people, okay, once you've engaged the architect, come to us. We can work on a preliminary design that you've got from your architect and give you a high level budget number to let you know where this is going to be. If that number suits you, you could proceed with your architect and go the full step. If it is too high, then you need to go back to the architect and say, hey, I need to look at this again. I need to make some modifications so it fits my budget. What I see happen a lot is people will engage an architect and they got a full set of drawings and they're going through planning, and architects aren't cheap. And they've paid 10, 20, 30, whatever $1,000 for a set of plans. And then they'll come to me and then I give them a price. They're like, it's just too much. I can't do this. And I'm like, well, you've already sunk all of these funds into architectural services and now they feel stuck. So they're like, I should have came to someone like you earlier. Da, da, da. And I'm like, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but at least if I can give you a picture of where it's going to be, you can make an informed decision. So if you've now made an informed decision and you proceed, we'll help you with going through planning, finding contractors that suit you, reputable contractors, and then we'll manage the project for you to help, again, mitigate risks that will come up that you might not be aware of because you're not in the industry. So get an architect first, come to us, get a budget, and then we'll set you on your path.
And just to piggyback, when you're saying get an architect first, you're saying get an architect to do some high level schematic sort of drawing.
Conceptual designs, schematic designs, because architects give you
like options.
They give you phases. So you'll start, you have a preliminary consultation with them, they find out what you want, then they'll give you some rough level drawings. Then they say, yes, you like this? No. Once you agree, then you go on to the full architectural phases and plans. But you don't want to do that until you know what the numbers are. So that's the biggest thing. So we can work to give you a high level budget based on schematic drawings, is what we'll call them, or conceptual designs. So yeah.
And so taken from that, because I do feel like what it sounds like, we have to have a strategy when it comes to I think obviously anything in life, but when it comes to real estate specifically or buying property, I do feel like, Dan, if you could speak to the strategy of thinking of this as a long-term investment and how do we get from, okay, I have a property, or I want to buy a property, and then I get to the point where I know I'm going to come to you guys and potentially get you to support me. How do I now add this to my overall financial strategy? Because I do feel like that gets skipped or missed in the conversation because it's a great goal to have.
Mhm.
But how can I be strategic about it long term?
So, I mean, it really comes down to you really just want to build leverage. So the key thing is just having your ducks in a row to be able to have the property. And then once you have the property, it's about maintaining it. It's about understanding what it could produce from a rental rate, income. So it's just really just wrapping your head around exactly why your purpose of buying is. And then once you have that, I think everything comes from there. So it's tough to, I don't know, just sort of
Pinpoint one
yeah,
thing,
pinpoint one specific thing with that question. But I think it, like you said, it's just having a plan. And I find, you know, people see things and they just like the idea of the shiny object syndrome, right? And so it's just, oh yeah, I like this, and I want to get a property, but why? You know, because and I would say it's point blank, right? Like earning a property is not for everyone. And a lot of people look to buy a property when they could probably reinvest into the family properties, and do a little bit more estate planning. And because that's a huge transfer of wealth that often gets missed and then goes down the hill probate or whatever the case may be. But I see that as a continuing theme. So yeah.
Let's be real. Money can be confusing, and many of us were never really taught how to manage it properly. That's why I appreciate tools like Nudge. Nudge is a financial awareness tool that helps you understand your money in a simple, no pressure way. It acts a bit like a personal money coach, sending you timely, personalized nudges about things that actually matter to you and your finances. You also get a personalized feed with easy to digest money tips, real world stories, and tools that help you stay on track, whether you're trying to save, pay down debt, or just make better money decisions day to day. Because when your money feels more manageable, your life just feels more enjoyable. Head over to nudge.butterfieldgroup.com to register today. That's a good point because I do feel like when we're talking about managing money, there are different avenues. And real estate, I feel like, has become the biggest pillar in building generational wealth and just financial conversations because it's so tangible. We can see it. It's visible, right? And so what are some financial mistakes people make when it comes to buying or selling? Like what are some things that they either try to skip on or things that they try to say, let me see if I can get quote unquote a better rate, but I'm actually losing quality on it when it comes to buying or selling because we want to get the biggest return for the investment?
So I think it's twofold. I think one, so if it's an investment property, I think a lot of people often don't shop around with banks if they're going for financing. You're not married to any bank on island. It's not back in the day of how we used to do it. You're able to consider all options and get whatever works best for you. Because when you start to really capitalize that interest that you're paying, and if you can get 1 point or 2 points better somewhere else, and that's over a 20-year term, now you're looking at, a savings of 300 to 400K, depending on, obviously it could range. Another place where I think people often take shortcuts is not creating like a sinking fund or a property management account. And this could be for any size of property, but when you own a property versus renting, things come up. Crap happens. You know what I wanted to say. So by taking a portion of the funds, even if you own the property or not, um, I'm sorry, even if you own the property or if it's, just, or if you live in it or if you're not living in it, if investment or not, putting some funds aside and just creating a sinking fund for capital projects. And capital projects could be anything from we need to replace a washer and a dishwasher, to, oh, something happened with we got to,
water pump,
yeah, we got to do a whole new pump or
windows.
whatever, just whatever, because things happen. And then the last thing I'd say is probably people being underinsured. And so we've seen that come up, and we've actually gotten quite a bit of business from it. because insurance premiums have been rising, as most things, and just making sure that your insurance, your replacement value is adequate. Because if something does happen, God forbid, then you want to make sure that you're covered and protected. So whether that's contents insurance, renters insurance, the whole nine, you want to make sure that you're protected on those fronts.
And so that's interesting because I think we've all lived away at some point, and I know it's mandatory, especially in the U.S., to have renters insurance when you do get a apartment. Like you can't get an apartment without renters insurance. And when I transitioned home, that wasn't like a thing, which I thought was odd. And but I also didn't know how to get that service because it was so easy away because it's literally a part of it. Whereas here, because it's not mandatory, it was like, so where do you go for this information? Like, how do you get this information? And so just thinking from a renter's perspective, like there's certain things that I don't think about because I don't own the property. So I'm not as invested.
Yeah.
And you just saying that actually makes me think like, yeah, even though I'm not technically tied to this building, as in it's my financial investment, it's my anything that I'm putting into it, I should still be thinking of it as if it was.
Yeah.
Because in the event that there is something that I need to then replace or do, I have some funds that I can put into it versus having to wait for a landlord that may or may not have the funds.
Yeah, and you see these type of stories quite a bit. And one thing I guess I will say is the tenant usually has a lot more rights than the landlord on all fronts. But at the same time, I'm not going to discredit and say there's a lot of slumlords and there are landlords out there. So it's a
I like the balance, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky spot, but it's something definitely to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. And like it just when you said that, it made me think about that because I was like, wait, that's not a big thing here, which is very odd.
I've never had renters insurance. Never.
Yeah, but yeah.
Did they offer it?
I haven't seen it offered anywhere.
Right. That's why I was thinking like, because when you said contents, I know that means for like, homeowners, like, for their contents. But I was thinking like as a renter, I have content in this property.
Right.
And like, God forbid a hurricane happens, like what happens to my contents type of thing. So that's what I just thought about. That being aside, because Robbie, coming to you when it comes to the construction side of things, what are some budgeting things that people try to skip out or take out? You did mention architects, which I never really even thought of that when it comes to, property in general, because I'm not in the industry, but also I wouldn't even think that I need someone to draw up a design for me. I just think I come to my real estate agent. That would have been me ignorantly before, saying, hey, real estate agent, this is what I want to do. So what are some things that I need to have in my budget if I am trying to either reno or do a new build?
Definitely, I have to say it again, definitely the architect budget, because you see how you're saying you don't think that you need an architect. A lot of people think I just want to change some windows, or I want to change some doors, or I want to add a closet.
Open this up.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of old Bermuda homes were sectioned off, and obviously now everything is more open plan. So understanding that even those small changes, you need to go to planning. And I'll just say it, it's like the elephant in the room. Nobody likes dealing with planning. So people want to take shortcuts and not have to. I'm not getting drawings because I just want to do this. And so many times I've been engaged by people, potential clients who says, I haven't gone to architect. I just want to do this. And then I get to the house and they're just want to do this list is humongous. Like people don't realize that just changing doors and windows, technically you need to go to planning for, because they consider that a structural change. So things like changing tile or changing cabinets or maybe plumbing fixtures or lighting fixtures, you don't have to. But any material changes to your property, doors, windows, you're adding on, you're changing or upgrading electrical, you have to go to planning. And people really try to skip that stage because one, it could be costly to get an architect, and two, planning takes forever. So people just want to get what they need to get done. That's the biggest thing that I see when I'm first being reached out to as far as clients, just that they have no idea. Oh, just come to my house. I'll show you what I want. I know that I want to take this wall down. And it's like, well, for a number of reasons, I will say get drawings, because not only are you going to define the scope, now you have a better idea of price. When you get contractors to give you prices, they're all bidding or quoting on the same thing. Versus contractor A, you take them to the house and you tell them this list. Contractor B, you tell them that list, but you might have forgot two things you don't think you forgot. And then now you got two different quotes and it's not apples to apples. And then you start with the wrong contractor and you're like, no, I did tell you this. Or, no, I didn't. So it's better to have drawings and then put it in writing, so at least you have a basis.
And I think I mean, it was just to answer your question. I'm not even sure if Robbie actually answered it.
I did.
Yeah. But one course that I think doesn't get factored in, or one factor that's not really thought of, is the carrying cost of property. So if you go to planning or wherever you purchasing a property, whatever the case may be, you're going to have to carry, the cost of that property for a certain time period where it's not providing any value, in a sense of it might just be sitting there as you're waiting to do some works, or it could be you're not ready to move in, or if it could be a variety of factors. But I think that's something that
You mean
often
like if
gets,
it's sitting there vacant doing anything,
yeah,
and you're still having that cost to
yeah, you got to
upkeep
pay
it
that
or
mortgage,
help,
upkeep it, and yeah,
yeah,
insurance, everything
insurance,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like you're still paying the courts, right? Land tax, these certain things, just yeah, out of sight, out of mind, in a sense.
And you're saying that would be more in a scenario if you haven't planned properly and things
Yeah,
are just stagnant and you're
yeah.
sitting there.
And even just the closing costs of purchasing a
Yeah.
property. I think that's something that, like the lawyer fees to purchase a property, the stamp duty to purchase a property. Um, if you're moving over your mortgage, giving them 3 months notice, um, different things like that, I think are often forgot. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I'm learning. I every time I do these conversations, I learn something new from the guests because you guys are the experts, so you have the information in your different respective industries, and it's so because I'm sitting here, I'm like, yeah, I'm just a renter right now, but if I was to like get him, I know there's some things that I'm now more astute to, but a lawyer was like not there. Like having a lawyer was not someone that I even would have thought that I needed because I'm like, I'm getting to the bank to get some money and then I'm getting somewhere else to buy it.
Got a real estate
I'm
agent.
my real estate
Got a
agent.
lawyer.
But that's
Got a
like
lawyer.
that's kind of like in my mind, that's what I'm thinking that's all I need. But you saying that actually reminds me that it's so much bigger than just I want to buy a property. And even though you did mention earlier, like, making it personal and like, trying to go up to property owners, having that, but that doesn't take away the other things that are necessary because I do feel like if someone heard that, like, oh yeah, then that means I can just go up to somebody and tell them I want to buy the house, and if they're ready to sell, they'll sell it to me.
There's a lot of
But then there's still other things that I
There's a
need
lot
to
of
consider.
yeah, there's a lot of cogs in the wheel, and I think the legal part is probably one of the most necessary, just to do your due diligence. Because sometimes, as Robbie mentioned, right, a lot of people will do works to properties and they haven't had planning approval. So you could be purchasing something that could be in poor title, or it could have, they could need, what is it called? If they've done something in planning and they shouldn't have.
Oh,
Retroactive.
retroactive planning
Yeah.
approval.
So different things that could just come into factor the new owner. If someone hasn't been paying taxes, someone hasn't been, there's so many things. If they haven't been paying their insurance, and just certain things that just can build up and snowball. So it's just making sure that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed on that front is necessary.
That's really good information. And I want to just maybe I have structured questions, but I'm gonna skip them because right now what I want to get from you guys is the lessons that you each have learned from your respective industries that you may not have also thought yourself when you first got into your space because you were at one point like probably the rest of us just like, it is what it is. I only know it's buying and selling. I see some people doing construction, but I don't know what's it for. Like I don't know all these ins and outs. So what's like that's one big lesson that each of you have learned from your respective spaces that was like an aha moment, or it just was like a light bulb for you where it kind of started putting things together that you may not have thought about. And it could be related to like what you guys studied, etc.
So, I mean, I'll go first. The biggest one for me would be around estate planning and the lack of estate planning on the island in households that look like us. Um, I the amount of times that I'm going to a property that is either in derelict or some sort of you know terrible capacity because it's just been sitting there, and it's been sitting there because brother and sister couldn't agree, and the other brothers moved overseas, and then you know one person is going to bought their own house, and another person doesn't have the means. So by not having certain conversations at the dinner table well in advance about what the plan is for, I'll say, your parents or grandparents' legacy, um, which would be the main biggest asset, which usually in most households is the property, is becomes like the ripple effect from that just becomes astronomical, and that's why you see so many derelict properties. It's because nobody has it's gets stuck in probate that previously took 2 years. Um, and then when it does, it gets into legal fights and stuff like that. People's wishes aren't adhered to, or people's wishes aren't shared, and it's not putting on the contract. So I think that's always sort of my, if I preach anything to anyone, especially when I'm talking to older persons, I say, if your kids are serious, tell them, let's get to the table and let's discuss this, because you can't avoid those uncomfortable and inevitable conversations.
Nobody wants to talk about death and estate planning, but it can save you so much money if you do have those difficult conversations prior to tragedies happening. So yeah, big thing. For me, I guess mine just twofold, so I'll try to keep it brief. So I guess this will be a funny in that we run a business and Dan handles appraisals and valuations, and I handle more the construction side. But before us even talking about this, I didn't really know too much about the importance of valuations and appraisals, because when you really think about it, and not to blow Daniel's head up, like the valuer, they don't control the market, but they have a big influence on it in terms of the values that they set, the opinions that they give on different properties. It allows you to be able to get funding or not, or it allows you to be able to, like Dan said, with probate. I guess where I'm going with this is people wanting a higher number for certain valuations and wanting a lower number for certain valuations, because you need someone like Daniel in different times of your property transaction. So, we have to be careful to be, well, not be careful to be, but be impartial and make sure everything is based on, sound data and comparables. But the importance of valuations, I never really understood until I started to talk about this and building this business with Daniel. So that is the first thing. And then the second for me in my own industry and field and project management is the importance of contracts and putting everything in writing. So many times I've seen construction businesses or even people doing work, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they have no contract. And they're doing it on somebody's reputation or a feel good factor. But when you're dealing with large sums of money, people can change quickly. So having the understanding of not being afraid to hash out contractual terms, make sure you include certain clauses, protect yourself, but also be fair. Because I've seen both sides where clients take advantage of contractors, but also contractors take advantage of clients. So being able to understand the importance of a good sound contract and what should be in it. So that's a big
Shameless plug here, Terry, and that's why people should hire project managers.
I do love that. And so I feel like with you two, we could actually make this an hour-long conversation. This could be a 2-hour-long conversation, multiple parts, because we haven't, I feel like we've just hit the tip of the iceberg. I feel like there's not so many different layers, but there's so many different avenues to take both of you in this one conversation. And I don't want to have you guys here all afternoon because you have lives and you have a business to run. But I do want to say, first of all, thank you guys, because you've not only enlightened me, but I do feel like anyone watching or listening to this, wherever they consume this content, is going to take away some type of nugget of information that they didn't know, or maybe they thought they knew and they actually didn't know that it's more to it than just what they know on the surface. So I did want to thank you guys. And I want to say that to wrap it up, we're going to have a little fun. So I have this quick fire round that I didn't give you guys those questions in advance because I didn't want you to prepare. So basically what it is, I have 5 questions and it's like a this or that. So I'll give you 2 responses, and then you each just have to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. So it's no overthinking. That is not allowed. So if either of you are overthinkers, let that go. We let that at the door. And so I'm going to let you guys answer at the same time-ish. Like Dan will go first and then Robbie will go. So if you guys had the same answer, that's cool. You guys could be twinning. But I am going to start with Dan, and then Robbie, you just jump in. So first one, buy land or buy existing structure?
By existing structure.
Okay. Next one, cost saving or time saving?
Time saving.
Cost saving.
Are we business partners?
but the yin and yang. That's why we got along.
I-
We're complete opposites.
So it's
We're complete opposites.
That's why I had to do this. So, biggest value booster, kitchen or bathrooms?
kitchen.
Okay, well, we got that.
Yeah.
Got that one.
Definitely,
Got that
definitely.
one together. Modern design or classic Bermuda style?
Modern
Modern.
design.
Okay, we're 2 for 2. Last one. New build or reno?
New build.
New build. Yeah.
Did that well. So to wrap it up, for anyone that is ready to start this conversation or maybe even to learn more, whether they want to buy, build, whether they want to maybe get into the industry, because that's something that they are interested in, can you let them know where they can follow you guys and connect with you online and kind of continue this conversation even further?
Yeah, so we're available on all platforms, social media platforms, as Compound Property Group. And then our email is info@compound.bm, and our phone number is 400-2300, compound.bm. So,
Website compound.bm. That's all the info.
Perfect. So thank you both. And that wraps it up with this episode.
awesome. Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.
Terry.
Thank you. I enjoyed
This was
this.
great.
Terry.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Butterfield for supporting financial awareness in our community. If this episode helped you, make sure you share it with someone in your life who needs it. Until the next episode, peace.